Welcome to the Coach Speak podcast, built for coaches, by coaches, hosted by Jamie Bolton and Dustin Martin. Sponsored by Ray Crowther, providing the nation's best athletic training equipment since 1932. And R4 Football Systems. Accelerate everything by decoding the game.
Hey guys, welcome back to Coach Speak. Dustin Martin here with Jamie Bolton. We got a special guest tonight. Before we get into that, we want to shout out to our sponsors, Team Builder, Tsunami Bar Sports, and Pro Quick Draw.
Yeah, guys, today's guest is one of the most innovative minds in high school football when it comes to player development. Brad Dixon is the head football coach and track coach at Camp Point Central in Illinois and a leading voice in Feed the Cats movement alongside Tony Holler. His teams have won 10 conference championships, made 14 straight playoff appearances, and brought home a state title, all while building the program around one core idea: speed wins. Coach Dixon has challenged traditional thinking and conditioning, practice structure, and what actually makes players better. And today we're going to break all of that down. Coach, we're fired up for this one.
Yeah, excited. Glad we could finally link up and get this done during a busy track season. So excited to talk to you guys.
Well, good deal. So, Coach, let's just start it off, man. Your team just lost a game, let's say, and the first thing your staff says is we need to condition more. What do you say?
Yeah, man. So we've had that. What's crazy is I've coached from 2003 to midway through 2017, what I would consider old school. And then in midway of 2017, we made the switch. Well, since that 2017, we've brought back some former players that played under us under the old way to be on our staff. And the first thing we get is, man, our guys are going to be soft. This what happened, Coach? This is not how we used to do stuff. And it's fun to see the buy-in that they eventually get. And they're like, man, I wish we would have done this. But, the simple answer to the not being in shape question is people, it's an easy cop-out. When you turn on a film and your guy gets whipped, obviously there's maybe that guy across from him is better. But as a football coach, the beautiful thing about offense is you get to dictate who gets the ball, where they get it, and who they run behind. And so for us, we're a small school. We have 220 kids. We're fortunate enough with our, sprint-based football model that we got almost 60 kids out, but we don't get to go out and recruit. We get what we get. We get different years like this. The last few years, we've had 13 seniors. Next year, it might be 7. This year we played 6 sophomores on defense. So we have to find ways to put our guys in the best position. And I think that's where, most issues happen is the coaches say, no, we're going to run this and this is what we're going to do. Well, if you're right tackle, like when we won the state title, both our tackles were less than 200 pounds. So if we would have ran plays and expected them to block a 280-pound D tackle one-on-one while we ran a double dive play or something like that, then we're dumb. So in that year, we ran a crap ton of edge plays. We got our guys to pull. Every once in a while, we'd flip our O-linemen, tackles, and guards and different things. And, we didn't run as much base blocking in that scheme that year because we had the speed and we had the explosiveness. We want to get our guys in space. And so for me, usually when it boils down to conditioning, it really boils down to you got whipped and you usually got whipped. Now you might have a young team. You might not be very good, but it's our job to find ways, find double teams especially. That's a big thing we do at a small school with smaller linemen is where can we find double teams? Where can we attack weaknesses and all those different things? So we're trying to get them as fast as they can, train them technique wise. And we do that with the less is more model and then put them in situations to be successful. And we're big on rotating guys through too. So if our guys are getting tired, we got to rotate them in and out. And that's a big thing that we do. So that's what we look at. We got rid of the Saturday morning, Friday night film session because all it is a complain fest where everyone's like, oh, this guy sucks and this guy sucks. So we got to fire him. And it's like, once you dive into the film, it's never as good or as bad as you think it was when you're watching it. So you really got, okay, now that you're done complaining, we got that out of the way, what's our solution? Where do we really need to focus? Well, our guys' first step out of their stance is too long. They got too much weight on their hands. Like we want to get into the crux of what the issue is, not this conditioning term, because anybody in the crowd can say, we're not in shape, we're not tough, we're not mentally strong. And it's like, okay, did they just develop that overnight? No. I mean, you lost the game because you didn't execute probably. And how can you get your guys in a better position to execute?
Coach, and this probably changes for you year to year, but are you an offensive guy? Do you call the
No,
offense? Okay.
No, I'm a defensive guy, and
Okay.
I've been at Camp Point. And I think I'm getting ready to start my 20th year, and for 19 of those years, I've had a guy with me as the offensive coordinator. He came in, he actually was the quarterback back when I was also in high school. We didn't know each other. Obviously, I grew up quite a ways away from here, but he quarterbacked the one playoff team in 2001 before we made this run of 14 straight. So, at Camp Point Central, there was one playoff team from 1968
Sure.
to 2008. There were one team, and then in 2008, we've made it ever since. He went off to college, got a degree in math, got a degree in calculus. He teaches upper level math, and he has complete control of the
Smart
offense.
guy.
Brilliant mind. I
Smart
still
guy.
call the defense. And so we've got a pretty good system of how we break down what we do. And it's why we don't have to spend, weekends and nights and all this time meeting as a staff because we've been together for so long.
Well, that brings me to a better point for my question. Now that I know you're a defensive guy, sprint-based football. A lot of coaches, I think, fear this because they have a fear that they may not get enough done, or if they're unsuccessful, this may be the reason. So, as a defensive guy, I'm sure that just like most defenses, pursuit and tackling are two really key things to you. How do you determine what is playing shape for the defensive side of the ball and making sure that your kids are in playing shape, if that makes sense? Because you're trying to get, more with less. So talk a little bit about by when you're going into preseason or early on, how do you make sure your kids are primed and ready for, maybe a 12-play drive if it came to that?
Yep. So I think the first thing goes all the way back to your off season. So one of the first thing we do after our last game of the year is we try to create a depth chart with as many one-way guys as possible, and we're talking a school of 220, right? We've got handful of dudes, we got some other guys, and everyone else is you throw them all in a litter, and then, they're all average or so. So what it does though is it gets us thinking about kids differently. It's like, oh man, if we move this guy to here, and if we can teach him how to do this, man, then we can sub him out over here. And so our mindset when we come into the season is trying to get as many guys on the field on a Friday night. And that might even include guys walking our halls. It's like, man, if we could just get him out, play nose when we're going against a really good run team, or he can be a two gap guy in this situation, or this guy can be a pass rusher, so when we sit down, we create one-way guys. And then we have what we call 1.5-way guys. What does that mean? It means you might start both ways, but we're finding a way to rotate you out. And most of the time that rotation happens on offense because we're a wing T team. We run with three backs. We've got multiple tight ends. Sometimes we use a split out. Sometimes we're in double tight. We'll rotate tackles. We'll rotate guards. And so because we can dictate who's getting the ball and who we're running behind, we try to sub as much as we can on offense. So usually after 2 plays, 3 plays, or a long run, we're subbing that running back out. I mean, we've got 7 to 8 guys over 200 yards. We have maybe 1 or 2 guys over 1,000, but we've got a whole group of 5 or 6, all 400 to 800 yards. We're really trying to rotate that way. So we're not having to get super tired on defense. We can rest. Now, different game plans, though. We train guys up. Maybe this guy's better when we're in our 5-3 front down on the line because we're playing a double wing team. But when we get against a spread team that's in 2x2, maybe he subs out and we can bring in this backup DB to play outside linebacker. And so we've got a plan for how to get guys in and out of the game. And we started early, right? Early in the year when we're not in game shape, we haven't played games yet. We're rotating through as many guys as possible throughout the game. And I think it helps our kids to know that, hey, if they'll put in the time, if they'll learn the system, and in our system we've had in place since 2009, it's a 3-3 base, but we do a few different things. We play mainly cover 3 with a few other things mixed in, but we try to get really good at our base stuff so we can plug and replace and sub. But don't get me wrong, when we need our dudes in the game, our dudes are going to be in the game, and we're going to give the ball to our best player behind our best lineman. But it's our job throughout the game to find ways so that when we do get in those tough games, when maybe our dude needs 20 carries, well, maybe throughout, the 4 previous games, he had a total of 20 carries, but we got him ready to go when we need him. I think the best example is the year we won the state title. Our stud middle linebacker fullback had like 50 carries for 600 yards in the regular season. And then he had like 102 carries for 900 yards in the playoffs in 5 games. I mean, he had 3 games where he rushed for over 200 because, hey, we needed him at that time. He was 6'1" and 225 pounds, but we found ways to sub him out and use him, I guess minimally throughout the regular season so that we could keep him fresh and be ready to go as the year went on.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And I think, me and Dustin both coached at smaller schools. And one thing that you're talking about probably gives you a competitive advantage over the other schools that you play. So if you're going to be either rotation based or even like a 2 platoon team. I mean, I remember at Cannon, we went to 2 platoon because I felt like we can get advantage over teams that don't do that because they're playing both ways. We could develop the athletes we thought that are going to be good enough to be on the field on first and second down on defense, and we get our dudes in on third down. So it could be like your best wide receiver can go over and play man coverage, and your best running back can go play defensive end if they need to on third down. Like you're saying, those 1.5 way players, it kept us extremely fresh and able to play fast, which was our philosophy. But it gave us that advantage because other teams are playing both ways. So I love that you're talking about that. That's really cool for
small first thing I do when I get our the roster and I start watching film for our next opponent is how many guys are playing both ways. And I like 8, 9, 10, sometimes 11. It's like, all right, this game might be tight for a while, but we're going to, we got to keep chipping away. And, we always talk about like our offensive coordinator, super smart. And it's like, hey, we're going to run it at them and we're going to run it at them. You try to run trap early in the game, right? The D linemen are disciplined. You start double teaming them in the game and, and they're fresh and they're getting off the ball and you're doubling them. And next thing you know, they're like, I'm going to get off the ball. And then boom, you hit them with a trap and it goes 60 yards for a touchdown because, we've doubled them. So we're trying to sub guys in and then we're trying to give guys different looks. And when you've went on it, like you said, what do we do on a 14 play drive? Well, if we were on defense for 14 plays, a lot of years we're bringing 4, hopefully 5 new offensive linemen on the field. Hopefully our quarterback's fresh and we're bringing those guys on the field to be able to start our offensive drive, and maybe that team has to turn around and put those same 10 or 11 guys back on the field. And at the 1A level that we're in, smallest class in Illinois, that's a huge advantage. And I think the way we train and the way we specifically try to get as many kids in the game helps us get those numbers to where we're able to do that. And just kind of, instead of spiraling out of control, it spirals uphill and we grab an extra kid out of the hallway or 2 extra kids here because they think they got a chance to play.
I'll do it.
All right, Coach, let's kind of dive into this. We're going to pick your brain a little bit and just kind of see your thought process and how you implement some things. So, the scenario is, you just got hired, the team is a tough team. Okay. But you're coming into a program. I know you've been there for a while, but let's say you're coming into the program. They believe in practicing a long time. The previous coaches maybe believe in conditioning. The team isn't as fast as you would like. Kind of walk us through.
Let's call them slow team.
Yeah, there you go. Let's just call them slow.
The best opponent to play.
Big, strong, and stiff and slow. What do you think is like the first culture shock? What do you cut? How do you explain how speed's important? Like, what's your first initial steps?
Yeah, I mean, I think hopefully there's some type of timing system, jump mat, whatever. I'm going to collect data, and I'm going to see where the guys are at. And where I'm at now, if I'm going into a new position at this point, I've got a lot of data going back almost 10 years now on free lap and all these different stuff, VBT data, and we have shred mill now, and we just got a 1080 sprint. And so I've got lots of data and I can say, hey, these are what our guys are running. And I think the best way I try to tell people that say, oh, my head coach is not really bodying like this other stuff. It's like when you measure stuff, you find out stuff. Start measuring your speeds, start measuring your jumps, then go out and practice. Do whatever you normally do. So if this is a fly 10 or this is their vertical jump, and then you go out and have one of those 3-hour practices, and all right, we're going to see where you guys are at today or the next day, and you get on the vertical jump and they jump 3 inches shorter than they did the other day, or they go in and destroy their legs in a squat. And even you wait 2 days and you test them, and it's like, okay, which again, there's times of the year where you're going to focus on strength, where you're going to focus on maybe repeat sprint ability. But if I'm taking over a job, new in the off season, I'm going to do everything I can to create a culture of speed, explosive movement, and we're going to go all in on creating better athletes. And that's going to be our focus. We're going to have record boards and PRs, and we're going to try to set, as many daily PRs as possible. I want every kid to know what their 40 time is, what their fly 10 time is, what their 5 into 10, what their broad jump is. And there's so many great tools out there, whether it's Tony Villani or Tony Holler or whatever. They've created programs where you can plug in information, and Tony Villani's got a great one. You say, hey man, your broad jumps here, your 20 into 10 fly here, man. If we get your 5 into 10, you have a chance, instead of running 5-1-3, you can run 4-8-9. Like, really? If I get my 5 into 10, yeah, man, let's really focus on that start. Let's really work on those accelerations, and you start speaking their language, and it's all about player improvement. It's not like, hey guys, we got to do this stuff so we can win the fourth quarter. Man, when it's 4th and 1 with your hand in the dirt, no one's going to go, oh yeah, I remember that gasser from a month ago that we ran. No, it's like, I want the dude that is super fast, super explosive. And that's who I want, that loves the guy next to him, knows coach has got his back, knows he's not a transactional coach that just says, man, if you get it done, I'm your buddy. If you don't, we're going to run until you puke. Like, I want the guy that says, hey man, we're in this together. We're trained together. We're fast. We're explosive. You're healthy. I believe in you. That's what I want to create with the guys that are going to be on my team. Because when push comes to shove, they're going to do it for the guy next to him, the coach that's got their back. And it's got nothing to do with that other stuff. And we're going to sneak all that repeat ability stuff in, and the tempo and all that within practice, with different periods and tempo periods at different times, and no huddle periods at different times, and situational periods at different times, where we can create those opportunities to get our kids ready for what they're going to see in a game. But we're going to be okay with playing the long game and say, hey, we're going to sub more in week 1 and week 2, which is going to help us build depth. Hopefully, we didn't really talk about this. And when we're playing all these one-way guys and we're subbing guys in and out, the opportunity for injury is much less compared to the guy that's out there for 120 plays. And we all know what happens when they do get super tired. And so we're just going to create, like, hey, we're all in for you. I want you to be the best athlete you can. I tell anybody that's willing to come out for spring track, hey, we're going to run track, but this is an athletic training ground. If you love basketball and you love football, come run track for us. I promise I won't make you run the 3,200. We'll put you in situations to get faster, to jump higher and jump further. And that's what we try to sell at Central.
Coach, it sounds like you got 60 kids, you said earlier. I don't know if you said that before we got on the air, but it's probably because they're not doing 150-yard gassers all year.
Right.
It's like, hey, man, I want to come out there and not have to run gassers. But I love it. But yeah, talk to us about, we're in that first phase. You've just sold everybody on speed over conditioning, very well articulated. Now let's talk about, you alluded to this, but let's talk about your practice. So how does your new practice look specifically? How do you introduce like sprint work? And then what replaces conditioning? Let's say as we kind of get up into like the fall camp, as we get closer
so
to
like in the summer, we're really not doing anything in terms of extra stuff or anything that even would resemble conditioning. We're gonna really focus on, especially if we're starting out, we start our first 2 days, our helmets off, and it's like walk and talk install. That's where we start. And we start with the basics every year. Like, this is the A gap, this is the 2-hole, this is what your split should be between guard and tackle. Like, we tell, hey, first group get out there, and then, we start there, and then we progress into helmets, and we're heavy into technique and teaching. You're talking about tackling. In my opinion, most tackles are missed due to a lack of positioning and tracking and how to understand tackling inside out and come into balance. And so when we're in helmets, we're doing all that kind of stuff. And then obviously we're running plays, and we're using that, maybe offensively or defensively, as our, progression. So, now we wear GPS, so we've got a better idea of what our guys' player load is and how we're managing that. But otherwise, it's just okay. If we're gonna do a team period, it might be as small as 8 plays to start. And you're gonna. I think it was Eric Corum said like you should be scared about how little you do at the start. If you're really going to focus, when do most injuries happen in the NFL and whatever? It's training camp, because we got to ramp it up and we got to get all this stuff in. And it's like, I understand we got to win games, we got to make the playoffs, and you can't go 0-5 to start, but you also can't win the state championship in the first day of practice. And I know I played where the first thing we did was get as tired doing conditioning on the very first day as possible, and I coached that way for a long time. And each practice snowballed, so we're going to waive all that. So we're going to have periods at the beginning of practice where we do sprint. We may go over mini hurdles, we may run fly 10s. We're going to do whatever. We'll get the timer out and we'll do certain drills. We may catch, we're not a spread team, but let's just say you could catch bubble screens and then time it. We'll throw rocket tosses in time. We'll set up jet, so we'll do all that. And then we'll just keep adding volume to that. And if we do have a day where we do quite a bit of volume, maybe it's the first time we put shoulder pads on, and then maybe it's the first time we go full pads, we'll follow that up with a much more technique focused day. We call them sprint days and non-sprint days. It doesn't mean we walk around. It just means on certain days, we're going to be focused on high speed, low rep. Other days, we're going to be more game speed, high rep. And, just like in the weight room, just because you work at 90% of your max doesn't mean that that's heavy volume. If you did 2 sets of 1 at 90%, you're going to be ready to go the next day way more than if you did 5 sets of 10 at 75%. And so most football coaches are like 10 sets of 10 at 80% every single day, because that's what it's like. Well, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, maybe back off a little Thursday and play Friday. We're going to try to give them the weekend off. Monday, we're going to spike the system with some sprint work, and then Tuesday we're going to have a much more technique, game speed focus practice. Wednesday we're going to ramp it up, and we're going to have some high speed. We may start with a red zone period. We may start with a goal line period. We may get done with our dynamic warm up, and we may go say, hey, it's 1st and goal from the 4, and we're up 1. And we may just, and our scout-o might be talking smack, and the calculus teacher who's running the scout, and our defense is like, we want to create situations. You want to talk about handling adversity. We can't mimic what it's going to be like in the state championship on a 4th and 1, but we can put periods in practice where it's like, oh gosh, we got to go right now. Yeah. And I think the other thing that we do really well, instead of conditioning or doing stuff if you lose, I love finality. Like, you create a drill situation like 1st and goal from the 4, and the offense scores on the first play, and you're just like, all right, guys, we lose. Well, let's go again. I'm like, no, if we do this on Friday night, the game's over. And then we move on to the next drill, and like the fun stuff of like destroying the scout team and hooting and hollering, it's gone. And so for us, what helps us keep our volume down is we create situations where like there's finality to either executing or not. And I think for us, that's helped us handle adversity and keep our volume down, because we don't say, well, let's run it again. We're going to start all the way over from the top. Well, yeah, I mean, I get that for your young kids, and maybe when you're starting out, but when you're talking varsity football and you're moving through the season, there needs to be finality. The kids need to understand that we don't have a million reps to get this right. We need to get it right, and we need to be able to execute it when the time comes. So, I got into several different things there, but just trying to explain how we wave within practice, high periods, low periods, and then also throughout the week. And with the GPS that we're wearing, we have to monitor the contact load, because that's different from the GPS sprint load, CNS load. So we don't want like high CNS load by sprinting a lot and then come back with a lot of contact, and then because your GPS could lie to you. So we want to keep our high days high and our low days low. And then, I know we're probably going to talk about weight room and stuff. We try to match that up in the weight room too. You don't want to have a day on the field where you destroy their legs, and then the next day in the weight room you destroy their legs. It's like, let's just destroy their legs on one day, and then we have a day where we don't do it the next day.
Yeah. I think it's cool to hear your finality thing. I can't tell how many times, when I was the head coach at Cannon, one of my best friends was the OC, I was the DC, and we'd have like a 5-minute period to start practice. It's a competition period, and it was like themed. It might be 2-minute or 4-minute or whatever it may be. But, you know, I was like, next thing I know, we look down, period one's 5 minutes, and we're 16 minutes into practice because the kids are enjoying it. We're enjoying it. And it's like, you know, and that was some of our best periods, but I can't tell you how many times I've been guilty of, you know, offense wins real quick. And I'm like, no, we need to see it again. Let's go. Or we'll win and offense wants to run it back. But it's a good point. Keeping your load and your volume down that way. That's
right. And there's a time and place for different things, right? So, you know, I like doing stuff like, you know, we may have a period where, like, let's say the week before, we gave up 4 big plays. I'm going to have a period in practice where I want to see those exact plays. I'm not going to tell our guys, but I'm going to make the same call that I made. And we may stop and say, now, hopefully we didn't make the same mistake we made in the game, but there's a time and place to stop. But then there's a time and place when it's like, no, you know, this is a basic fundamental thing. We didn't get to the hip of the guard, or we didn't get our near foot in the ground, or whatever. If we don't do those basic things on, you know, tomorrow night or Saturday afternoon or whenever it is, then that's it. And it doesn't matter what we call or whatever in some of these situations. So, you know, we don't try to outthink it. We want to make sure, you know, we probably need to continue to do a better job of even more and more situations, because we don't want our kids to, I mean, if we get a takeaway and we're like, whatever, you know, 1st and 10 from the 50, I mean, our kids should already kind of know, hey guys, when we take the ball away and we're around midfield, this is what we're going to run on play 1. We're going to take a shot. Like, where the kids already know what the heck's coming. We always script the first 5 and we rep those and different stuff. Or, you know, it's like, hey, when we get in that first 3rd and long, we're running this play, or this is the blitz we're going to have on, because this is what they like to do in that first 3rd and long. We want our kids to be in those situations. And then, it's like, hey, man, we screwed it up. We can't screw it up tomorrow night. Now, if it's a young kid in the JV, you know, we're trying to separate. And so when our JV goes to team and stuff, there's a lot more, you know, repetition and getting stuff right. You know, we're talking varsity, right? We want to make sure we're teaching the young guys and what to do and what they did wrong and so forth. But we're also, you know, all of our position coaches are tagging practice film every night and tagging players and sending them things specifically with what we did right and wrong. And you know, that's a big part of what we do.
Coach, what's your like base defense? Like, are you more odd, even? Like, I know you said you're a big cover 3 team. What do you like to do? And what kind of offenses are you seeing mostly there? Like, are you seeing similar wing T, or is it all over the place, you know, being smaller? Talk a little bit about what your base, like maybe run structure fit is and those things.
Yeah. I always joke with the kids that I coined the term build the wall before Donald Trump coined the term, because we're a big spill team. So we're an odd front team that can get into, we've done a much better. So in 2018, you know, we had been rolling pretty good playing our 3-3 and our 5-3 when a team was downhill run. And we played a really good Forreston team that was in the state title for like the 2nd time in 3 years. And they tripled our nose on the first play and blocked everyone down and kicked out against our odd front, because we are a tight front team. And they blocked us all down, kicked us out, ran C gap, and all the things that we had done in our odd front up to that point didn't work. And I mean, we lost 44-6, and that was a gift. Like, it was 30-0 at half. They could have beat us 80-0. And so it's like, okay, we got to have some opportunities to get into an even front. But we are generally an odd front that goes from a 3-3, and it's not stacked. We rarely ever stack it, and to a 5-3 if we're playing a heavy run, which we see wing T, wishbone, power I, shoot unbalanced power I. We played a team in the semifinals that was sometime power I to the unbalanced side, sometimes power I away from the unbalanced side. And then we see hurry up, no huddle. We see shotgun. So our conference has played in the state title game a lot. We have another conference to the north in Illinois called the NUIC, Lena Winslow. They beat us once in the state title game. We beat them once. They've played for like the last 7. It's been us. This year was another team in our league. Before we went 2 or 3 years in a row, it was another team in our league. And so our league gets us prepared for the playoffs because of everything that we see, and it's a good league. And then, so we're generally 3-3. It sometimes can be a 3-4, but we don't play it that much because a lot of times we play our outside linebackers, and they're true outside linebackers. They're like usually 6 foot to 6'2", 185 to 200. They're not like DBs rolled up. We'll play them at 7 yards off, so it's almost like a 3-3-5. Sometimes we'll take our backers and play like that. Cover 3, the Iowa State stuff, but our outside linebackers are going out and, jamming at the corner. So we do a lot of different things with those outside linebackers. But our goal is to spill everything, play tight, spill everything to the edge, and then obviously we want to keep teams from throwing it down the middle of the field. And so with a single safety, you got three verts out of trips, you got 4 verts out of doubles. We work the heck out of doing that and rerouting and forcing teams to throw down the sideline. That's kind of our focus, and that's how when we talk about what do we do in those first couple of days when we have no helmets in the summer. We walk through and say, guys, where's the easiest throw against our defense? And guys that don't even know, they're like, right there. I'm like, exactly. If you know it, every team we play knows it. So, we start there and we do everything we can to make sure we build a wall and that teams have to bounce everything. And with our speed, we feel like we can run with anybody. And we're going to make sure that we stay deep and we take away the middle of the field and we force everything either, screens to the sideline, hitches to the sideline, or something deep down the sideline that we can make a play on.
Yeah, it makes sense. And it's probably an interesting dynamic with your team as well, because you're a you're a sprint-based team, but yet you play a very physical brand of offensive football. And I'm sure
Yeah.
it's the same case on defense. How do you balance that in practice? Like how do you go and like, okay, we're gonna run, superpower like 15. I don't know if y'all run that or not, but it's like, how do we is it like that? Or is there ways to like
Yeah. I mean,
in those game periods to be sprint based?
right. So some of it's, we're a wing T team that has about, 6 or 8 main, whether it's buck sweep or jet, double dive, traditional belly, that type of stuff. But each year's a little different. Like, coming back this year, we'll have a junior who's been now it will be a 3-year starting quarterback who we started to run more last year. And now he's going to be a junior. He's 6'2", 195. We're going to run the quarterback more. The fullback I was telling you about in our state title year, 6'1", 225 pounds. We moved him to quarterback his senior year. He had 1,000. So every year, what we do morphs a little bit. What we focus on, like some years we're heavy in trap and buck sweep. Some years, because of our team, it costs too much to really get really good at it, because we are really good at just, we had a 6'4", 270-pound tackle that's getting some looks by some smaller D1s, and a 6'1", really good small school 260-pound right tackle. We ran a lot of base blocking schemes last year because those are the 2 tackles we had. So each year, and so depending on who our backs are, what their skill sets are, and what our line does dictates, again, do we want to go really fast? Sometimes we do. Other times we want to be very deliberate. Are they trying to take away the edge? Well, if they are, it's going to be a pretty vanilla game plan, and we're going to run the fullback about 30 times, because if you count our tight ends and we got 7 guys and you've got 4 guys because you've got the other 4 guys on the edge, and then you got DBs, well, we're essentially 7 on 4. And so we're going to run the B gap until you do something different, and then we're going to get to the edge. So a lot of it's game plan specific. We've been in the league a long time. We know how teams like to defend us. Different teams do things different. And we've seen every junk defense. So kind of the running joke in our program is, what are they going to run defensively against us? And the answer is, we have no idea, because we have teams that have played 6 games in an odd front. Let's say they played 6 games running a 5 front. They'll come out in a 7-2. They'll come out in a 6-3. They'll come out in a 6-2 with guys that haven't even played in certain spots. And it's like, okay, and how they get them to even do anything defensively in a week's time of throwing a junk defense in, I have no idea. But that's why we have rules, and that's why we have things that we like. And so that, so for us, it's very personnel specific and game plan specific on whether it's going to be that vanilla run it down your throat a million times, or hey, we're faster than them, we're more explosive, let's get to the edge, they can't run with us, then we'll run up the middle when they all spread out. It sounds pretty elementary, but that's how we look at it.
Yeah, sometimes it's you got to make sure you don't overcomplicate it.
Yeah.
It's the take what's there, and I had to learn over the last probably 5 years defensively. It's like, you know, really it comes down to leverage, tackling, and pursuit. Like the
Yeah.
scheme is important. The scheme becomes more important when the personnel on the offense gets better. The scheme on the offense doesn't bother me. We were kind of talking the other day, me and Jamie, and we were talking about how, sometimes at the high school level, we give these quarterbacks a little bit more credit than they deserve. And,
Mhm.
I used to be like a huge Rip Liz one high match guy. And I was like,
Yep.
you know what? Like, I would rather do less with one scheme and run more versions of a scheme with less intricacies in that scheme. Because at the end of the day, if you're going against an average to below average quarterback, you don't need to run all the sophisticated intricacies of the coverage.
Right.
However, if you're going against a really great quarterback, if he can throw a perfect ball, it don't matter what coverage you run. So you have to
Yeah.
find a different ways to get him off schedule or get him flushed out the pocket or uncomfortable. And that's kind of what you're saying. Like sometimes it can be more simple by doing things that way. But coach, I think that's kind of where we're in alignment with what you were just saying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, how many things can we make look the same pre-snap? Yeah, we could run 3-3 cover 3, and then we can get into 3-4 cover 2, and it's like, oh man, cover 2 would be really good. Yeah, but I mean, that's a whole different look for the safety, right? So how are we going to find time in practice to get really good at cover 2, but then also get good at cover 3? And then, are we putting cover 4 in? How about cover 1? Are we going to go 0? Are we going to bring the house and run 0? And how do we do all that? And what if they motion into 5 wide? Well, then we got to check from cover 2 to this. And it's like, wait a minute here. I don't even know what you're saying. I still don't know what 31 personnel. I always get those confused. Is it tight ends first and then running backs, or vice versa? Like, I just want to talk black and white. Our gaps or our alignments are numbered just 1 to 9. We don't mess around with eyes, and the 6 isn't outside the 8 and all that other stuff that we just kind of copy off somebody else. We always tell people we run the offenses and defenses we run that are, I would say, are 3-3 based and wing T based, but it's like 19 years of doing stuff, getting your ass kicked in the process of doing something, going back to the drawing board and say, well, if we keep doing it this way and this other team does this to us again, we're screwed. So we may want to do this. We may want to move our wing backs back full time. Don't put them so close to the line, or vice versa. May want to tighten our splits up sometimes. May want to wide, like everything we do is because somebody has exposed what we did and we had to adjust to it. And so that's the system we have. So I can't give you my system. It is 20 years of, I think this will be great. And then you get torch, tight front's great. They can't trap us until they just block everybody down. They one-on-one block with the wing back, and they run the C gap until they get tired of it. It's like,
we talk about it all the time. It's one thing to be like copy and paste offense or defense, but it's another thing to have the experience of going through it and making it your own. And it could be a geographic thing. It could be a demographic thing. It could be a classification issue, but you really have to have the experience to have those answers year to year when maybe you don't have the wing backs or the quarterback or maybe it's the safeties. And now you have to have some kind of adjustment. Like, man, I can't run this. What am I going to do? And I think there's something to be said about that. But yeah, coach, that's excellent. I think we're going to move into rapid fire, coach. Martin, you ready for that?
Yeah, let's do it, man. Favorite part of the show right here.
All righty. You want to start us off?
Yeah, coach. All right. So, let's say you got some bad weather rolling in. The athletic trainer tells you, hey, coach, you got about an hour, maybe hour 15. What do you prioritize at practice? Let's say it's middle of the year. You may not be in conference play yet, but you're coming up on that. You got about an hour to get your Tuesday practice in. What do you prioritize, coach?
So for us on Tuesdays, it's a helmet day. So that's a pretty fundamental day. We're probably going to be group, like we like to work our wing, tight end, tackle together on one side. and both sides will work left and right. Then we'll work our guard, center, guard with our quarterback, fullback. So we'll do that for a group period. Then we might do like a jet period where we're just working half line jet, or we might work, double downhill. And then same thing defensively. We may work inside with our 3 down linemen and our 3 inside backers on, gun counter and zone. And we might work outside backers, corners, and safeties together on bubble and go, slaying out, just those different concepts. So we would probably prioritize group if we're in the middle of the year. I'm not a big everyday drill, like individual guy. Like we should progress these individual drills until we get to the point where they're not necessary anymore. Now we may revisit some if we revisit a scheme we haven't seen in a while, but it's like, once you teach somebody running mechanics, when you get ready for the sectional track meet, you don't go back to your, okay, guys, get in your 3 bucket position and I want you to do this. Like you've transitioned out of that. You're in and out.
Uh-huh.
So for us, as the season goes on, that's another way we cut practice down, because we're really, we're going hour and a half tops anyway, as the season goes on. And so we're really prioritizing group and then some specific team periods. And depending where we're at from a physical standpoint too, if we've proved time and time again that our guys are getting it done, there's years we may go a couple rounds in the playoffs and not put pads on until the game day, because we don't need to see that. We see it every Friday night. The guys have proved it. We're just trying to keep them healthy and fresh. And, we're not trying to
little
our guys know
Wednesday,
what's up,
Wednesday bowling and Wednesday top golf is what we do in the playoffs. So
there you go.
I get it.
I'm
At
telling
that
you.
point,
So yeah. And most people, I always say,
We're
like, most people do the
gassers.
opposite. Oh, it's playoffs now, boys. We're going to, we're going to go even harder. And it's like, man, your competition's better. Your guys are going to have to play longer. They're going to have to play harder. They're going to have to be locked in. And the more you take away from them all week in practice, the less they're going to have in that game.
No doubt. Well, Coach, like, let's say you're watching film, all right, and your team looks slow, or you guys are wearing the GPSs and they are slow. You can see it, they're slower. What's maybe something you're going to take that next week and make an adjustment on?
Yeah, I'm going to look at like outside things too. Was it homecoming week? Was it, what else was going on? If it's only certain players, you have a conversation, say, hey man, you're not hitting, if I think that what we did in practice isn't like anything out of the ordinary. Now, if I look back and say, yeah, we probably ran too many plays Wednesday, we got, like you said, we got going and we got to smashing each other a little bit and guys were hyped and then we were destroyed for 2 days. So we'll look at that. And that's a great thing about GPS is we can track player load. We've got other metrics we use, like high-speed accelerations, that we're trying to get an X amount number. We have 2 years of data now, so we can say like, hey, the most our wingbacks that also play DB ever get in terms of yardage and high-speed accelerations and top speed is here. So we know what we need to get in a week. So we'll look at that. Obviously we'll talk nutrition and sleep, and maybe it's outside things that are, it's whatever. So yeah, we'll look at all those different things. And then, yeah, there's times it's like, well, back when I was doing PE, it was like, man, maybe I shouldn't have did that in PE that week too. Cause we switched to this one exercise and all their legs were sore. We went to, I don't think I would go eccentrics. So maybe I got a wild hair and I said, hey, we're going to do a set of eccentrics, and everyone's legs were dead. And it's like, oh, that was dumb, So yeah, we look at those types of things, but we try to do a good job of having a unified approach from our training during the school day to what we're doing at practice. And I think the biggest thing we learned with GPS is there's times we can push them a little harder than we did. And then we also learned moving things around in practice, things on the surface that appear to be not very demanding, like routes on air, are actually very high demand on the CNS, because you're covering quite a bit of high speed yardage. So that needs to be not on your low CNS day. That needs to be on your high day. And so there's just things like that we've learned to kind of, hey, kick return kick return on air seems pretty harmless until your starting running back hits one for 60 yards and hits 22 mile an hour. And his player loads at 110 when you didn't want it to be over 70. It's like, oh, maybe we got to move that or do something different. So we look at all that stuff, and we're still learning. I think after this year, we'll have in some situations have 3 different guys, maybe 3 different types of guys playing a similar position, and we can really kind of figure out what we need. I mean, that's the ultimate goal. Like, I want to train our linemen the way they need to be trained to be able to play. I want to train our wingbacks the way they need to be, if they're one-way guys or two-way guys. And I always say, when we did all those gassers and stuff, we made all the fast guys slower and less explosive because they just did enough to not get yelled at and be in the front, but they didn't get any better. And now we can kind of, hopefully with how we do it, make everyone better at the spot they need to get better at.
The value in the GPS is kind of like VBT training. You know, like a lot of people like it for proper load or how fast you move the load, but the immediate feedback and how you can change something that's going wrong or reemphasize something that's going right is what I really like about sprint-based football, and the things I like about the way you train and you bring the CNS into your training programs and your practice. Man, this has been great. I really appreciate your insight on a lot of this. You know, we had Tony Holler on a couple weeks ago, and to hear it kind of from his standpoint, but then to hear it from another coach and how you implement it daily in your grind, and even at a smaller level, you know, where, you know, I loved hearing how you talked about you have your one-way players and your 1.5-way players, two-way players. Like, I really liked hearing a couple of those things, man. This has been great, and truly appreciate you coming on.
Well, I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, Coach. Well, good luck, man, moving forward. We'll be checking in on you soon, but guys, we'll see you in the next one.
See you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning into the Coach Speak podcast. If you're interested in being a guest speaker on the show, we'd love to hear from you. Email us at coachspeakpodcast1@gmail.com. And if you have a question for our Q&A segment, don't forget to submit it through the form in the episode description. We appreciate your support, and we look forward to seeing you in the next episode.